Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Welcome to another episode of the Grow Strong Leader podcast. You know, there is a lot of similarity between leadership and sales. And that became even more obvious to me as I read this wonderful book called Selling in a Post-Trust World. And I have with me as my guest today the author of that book, and you are going to learn so much about your leadership role and how to become even more effective in building trust with the people who are important to your success. I want to welcome to my show, Larry Levine. Hi, Larry.
Hey, Meredith, how's it going? It's so good to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you too. And of course, I must give a shout out to Damon Lemby,
Uh,
our mutual good friend and colleague who introduced us. And we've just had such an alignment of positive energy and values that I'm just more than excited about bringing you to my audience today.
oh, well, thank you. And I appreciate Damon. And this just shows everyone that when you can pour into your network, good things happen because you don't know who knows somebody who knows somebody. And it's just been great getting to know you. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
You. Well, let me give a little bit of background to my audience before we jump into all the things I want to talk to you about related to your new book. Larry is the international best-selling author, actually, of two books. The first one, which I have right here, Selling from the Heart, and as I mentioned, his new one, Selling in a Post-Trust World. He's also the co-host of the award-winning Selling from the Heart podcast, which I highly recommend if you are interested in learning more about how you can lead and form positive relationships with others coming from the heart. In a world where it can be hard for salespeople and leaders to create trust, Larry helps sales teams leverage the power of authenticity to grow revenue, grow themselves, and enhance the lives of their clients. Larry has coached sales professionals across the world, from tenured reps to new millennials entering the salesforce. And we're going to explore these ideas from Larry's latest book that apply, as I mentioned, to leaders and salespeople alike. So, Larry, where I want to start is in your own journey, because I think it's fascinating as a salesperson and as a leader. How have you evolved over time and come to create the concepts that you have in your new book?
Oh, wow. Where do I even begin, Meredith, with this? But it's been quite a journey. And just to give people context to where I'm going to go with this, I love everything about sales. And I came out of a really highly commoditized, and this is going to really lend some credence to the question that you had asked, is I came out of a very highly commoditized sales channel. I sold photocopiers my whole entire career in Los Angeles. So everything from down the street to then I had the opportunity to buy into a dealership as a business partner, and we rapidly expanded around the Southern California market. But what was really interesting along the way is I knew, and this is before I became business partners and then obviously a leader, is I knew as a salesperson, if I couldn't lead myself, I couldn't lead others. And so I held myself to a higher degree of standards than any sales manager ever held me accountable to, any sales leader ever held me accountable to, because I believe leaders are influencers and they also create inspiration. And I knew if I could become a leader and lead myself, then I can help others become better. And those others becoming better were my clients and my future clients. So I always carried that with me in the back of my head as a solo producer. But then once I became a business partner, I learned that if you pour into your people, they will pour into your clients. If you pay attention to your people, they will pay attention to your clients. And I carried that with me, and I carried that with me. The transforming moment, though, was when I exited the photocopier channel and I had to go out on my own. And I'm in my late 50s, knocking on 60. And I've learned more in the last decade about myself and how to lead others than I did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s combined. And it was simply in bringing selling from the heart and now selling in a post trust world to life that I learned more about myself and how to interact with people and how this message could help people help their people become better.
Great. And I'm curious, and I love what you said, that self-leadership really is the very first step. If we're trying to influence others and we haven't really addressed our own either issues or areas that can hold us back, it's really hard to build up that trust that's needed. And I was also curious, you have such success with selling from the heart. What was it that you discovered you had either left out or you had more to say that prompted you to write the new book around trust?
It was a cold glass in the water from my business coach and my business mentor. And we were having success with selling from the heart. But what we had found out is in full transparency, we kind of hit a brick wall because selling from the heart, everyone, when they think about it, I don't have to explain to somebody, Meredith, what selling from the heart is. But what people were equating this to is pixie sticks and rose petals, right? It's the touchy feely aspects of sales. And I vividly remember this. And this was only 3.5 years ago that this happened. I sat down with my business coach. Daryl sat down, Daryl Amy, who's my podcast partner. We all sat down and they were coaching us. And one day, my business coach and my business mentor says, listen, you got to be able to look executives in the eye and have a very stern but loving conversation with them on how do you take selling from the heart and actually turn it into revenue and profit. They said, if you can't do that, you're going to have a nice lifestyle brand, but you're not going to be able to help executives help their sales teams grow revenue and profit. So the question was this: what's the underlying thing that selling from the heart does? When you think of selling from the heart, what is that really helping sales leaders and their people to accomplish? And in less than 30 seconds, I said, build trust and credibility. Then they both said, Dan, here's what y'all need to do. You need to go out and help sales leaders, have conversations with sales leaders in how selling from the heart can help them drive revenue and profit in a world that doesn't trust salespeople and doesn't view them as being credible. So we sat down in a room for a day. And that's really how the crux of the whole book came out, because that's how the trust formula was built. It was built on a whiteboard in a hotel room in Atlanta, Georgia, with us saying, until you can look a leader in the eye and explain how selling from the heart can help them, not much is going to happen. Thus, that's how selling in a post trust world came to be. That's how we came up with the whole trust formula that leaders can apply to their people and their salespeople can apply to their clients.
That's the perfect segue. And I love that story of how it evolved because I think that's so key in everything we do in business is we can read a book, we can hear an idea. How do we actually bring it to life in the
Mhm.
way we do things and how we show up? How are we being with ourselves and with others? So let's jump in then to this 4-part formula because I think it's brilliant. I love that you reduced it to a single small card here. And then we can do a deeper dive into each of the elements, but let's get the big picture out to folks first so they can understand what does it mean?
Yeah, the formula is broken down into 4 components, and the reason why there's 4 components is thanks to my business coach because he said, you know what, people remember things in equations, but it's got to be a simple equation to remember, and it's just how our brain works in remembering things. So when he sat down with, it, he goes, okay, if selling from the heart helps salespeople and the leaders build trust and credibility, well, what are the components? And we sat down and we whiteboarded it out. It's quite simple. It's authentic relationships combined with meaningful value. And we all broke these down so they all shrink to 2 letters: Authentic relationships is AR plus MV. So I'm going to take everyone back to math for a moment. These are math equations. And I was horrible in math, Meredith, but they're simple math equations. It's like algebra coming alive. But it's AR, authentic relationships, plus MV, meaningful value. And then the multipliers or the accelerators to this are inspirational experiences, which is IE, and disciplined habits. Those are the four foundations for the trust formula. You combine two together and then you multiply two together as the accelerators. And that's how you build trust and credibility.
But the nice thing about that formula is there's not a number that has to be the correct number that you come up with on the other side of the formula. It's just it can equal success,
Yeah.
however you define success and business success. And to me, as I read the book, as we were talking before we started recording, I was reading this book through two lenses, from the sales perspective and from the leader's perspective. And they align beautifully. There's just so much value. So whether you are in a position of leadership that's related to sales or not, this is an excellent book to really study, dive into, because there's so much to extract from it that applies to being an effective leader. And let's start with that first one, because I think that this whole thing of authentic relationships, I love that you start with yourself.
Yeah.
And of course, we alluded to that early on when you were talking about your own history and managing and leading yourself. What does that look like for a leader who's really eager to draw out the best in his or her people? What's the start point about really getting to know themselves and being authentic with themselves?
I think great question. I really believe, and I learned this later on in life. I wish I would have learned this earlier on in life, but unfortunately I didn't. But I think a great place to start, my belief on this, is a leader's got to really unpack what their why is. And I'll take this one step farther. Is there's a lot of people say, well, I know my why. And I thought I knew my why, but it was superficial until I really went deep and I go, okay, what's my operating system? What's my why operating system? So, in other words, what's my why, my how, and my what? Not only as an individual, but as a leader. And when I took this, a special shout out to one of our partners at Selling from the Heart, and that's the Why Institute. And the Why Institute was really instrumental in me really uncovering this. And I encourage all leaders to do this. Is when I uncovered this helped me really get in tune. And there's some congruency in how I built out my authentic self, Meredith. And my why is I believe success happens when I contribute to a greater cause. And how I do this is by bringing clarity to the forefront with the ultimate goal of building trusted relationships. And when I found that out, I go, that's how I carried myself as an individual and as a leader. So I want leaders really to take a step back. And in order to bring the best version of yourself forward to build those authentic relationships, you have to get to know yourself internally and the relationship you have with yourself by uncovering what's my operating system? Why do I do the things that I do? Really come to grips with them and then just bring those to the forefront.
And we get so involved with doing, that to pause and take time to reflect and go within to answer that question can seem less important. I've got all these things to do. So, talk a little bit about why it is important to pause and take time to discover your why.
Yeah, I think in today's crazy busy world, it's really important because this has a direct impact on how you work with your people. It really does. And again, I learned this the hard way. I really did learn this the hard way because I shoved this off to the side because I really thought I knew myself. But it wasn't until I was willing, I call it opening up the cupboard, which is just like opening up the inside of you. Just you got to be able to willing to open up. And as a leader, it's really important because when you truly know yourself and you know who you are, then you can sit down and I think you become more transparent. You can become more vulnerable and you can lead with curiosity when you're working with your people because you have strength in knowing, you know what, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I'm going to bring to you. And this is how I'm going to help. I think it's mission critical today more than ever because again, this is just my belief on this, Meredith, is there's too many people that are leaving things at a surface level. They're bringing bits and pieces of themselves, whether that be an individual contributor or a leader. They're bringing bits and pieces to themselves to the forefront. However, we're in the people business. And in order to truly build trusted relationships as a leader with your people, I feel it's imperative you have to be transparent, you have to be vulnerable, and you have to bring a piece of your heart and something that's deep inside you to your people in order to connect at different levels. The only way you do this is you got to build a confidence in yourself and build the confidence in yourself by uncovering your why. Once I did that, my confidence soared, my believability in myself soared, and my self-worth soared. And the interactions with my people became better.
I love what you just said because what it makes me think of is the more we understand ourselves and come to value who we are, the easier it is to be open and transparent and vulnerable, like you're saying. There's no threat to our ego because we know ourselves.
Yep.
And I think that is such a key piece. And I find that so true. The more comfortable I am with myself, the easier it is to have open conversations with other people. I don't have to try to be someone else or be a different way than who I am. And people sense that.
They
I
do.
think that's such a key point that I would love for you to talk about from a sales perspective. In addition to leaders, people are much more attuned to genuineness, I think, today, and intolerant of any kind of a false or superficial approach. And how do you see this playing out in sales situations when a salesperson is willing to be open and vulnerable with clients?
I this is what I see, and I saw it when I was in the sales world, is when you can bring this to the forefront, you connect and relate to somebody really fast. And in the world today where skepticism's really high, the lack of trust is really high. The BS meters are just pointing straight to the sky on this. I can't prove it. It's just like a sixth sense, but people have it. When you're comfortable with who you are, people can sense it in your tonality of your voice, the words you use, the messaging you use, the eye contact you have, how you're leaning in, maybe as opposed to sitting back. People sense all of this. And we have this innately in ourselves. It's just the choices that we choose to make and how we carry ourselves. But when you're confident, you believe in yourself, and you have high self worth, watch how fast you start connecting to people. And I've always said this, and I believe this, whether you're a leader or whether you're an individual contributor having to drive revenue and profit, is the more comfortable you make somebody feel about you, the more comfortable they become. And when that happens, they soon start opening up. And when they open up, they start sharing secrets with you that they're not sharing with somebody else. Those are the things they hold close to their heart. So whether that be a leader with your people or whether that be a salesperson with their clients, everyone's holding something close to their heart that they value. And when you can get them to take that key out and open it, magic starts to happen. But it's all in how you carry yourself. And when you carry yourself with confidence and you make someone feel comfortable, watch how fast they start viewing you as somebody who is trustworthy. They go, finally, I'm having a conversation with somebody who has my best interest at heart, who's valuing me, who's seeing me, and is making me feel comfortable. When you can do that, watch what starts to happen.
Would love for you to share this story of your days with the copiers where you had this one client that went through a number of salespeople in your company. and you were able to connect on the basis of the shared baseball interest and the things you knew and were able to bring to the conversation that, like you said, just at lightning speed, you created trust, whereas others had not.
Yeah, I believe I'll get to the story, but I really believe this, Meredith, that we all have a secret sauce. We all have something inside of us that just comes easy and natural that we don't really have to think about. I just have this secret sauce of how fast I can connect and relate to somebody. Always have. It's helped me in so many ways. But to play out to just to kind of lend some light into that story is when I was in the copier world, I was in the latter part of my career, I was given an account that said they were cycling through salespeople, just one right after another. And this person was just, for lack of a better word, they were spitting salespeople out one after another. I just can't relate to what you're doing, right? No one's listening to me and all of that. And this person was cycling through salespeople. So finally, sales leader in in the company I was working for says, "All right, Larry, this is the last shot. You got to go in there and try and save this account, or else it's going to go somewhere else." And it was a big bank here in Southern California. And I set up an appointment. The gentleman set the appointment up with me. And right away, I had the back of my head, they're cycling. He's going to cycle through salespeople. He's going to cycle through salespeople. And in less than 2 seconds, I spanned the wall. I saw baseballs. I saw a picture of his kid playing baseball. I knew he was playing travel baseball because I could just recognize some of the uniforms in Southern California. I just simply asked him, "How long has your son been playing travel baseball?" That was it. It's all I asked him. And for the next 10 or 15 minutes, it's how his son got involved in playing travel baseball, how he's committed to it, and so forth. I said, "You know what? My son played travel baseball from the time he was 8 till the time he was 14 years old." "Really? Whereabouts?" And we just started having this conversation. Not business, not anything else. And at the very end, I said, I could talk baseball all day long, but that's not why I'm really here. Why I'm really here is to help with the issues that you've been having here at insert name of bank. He just opened up. I got files. I was able to at least salvage the account till the day that I left the company. Point being, business is personal. I don't care what anyone says, business is personal. However, a smart professional is not only going to understand when to bring personal to life, but how fast to move it into business. Because you have to go from business to personal, and I always say it's like a crazy eight. You got to be able to cycle through going personal to business, business back to personal. And that's the art of having a competent conversation. And just requires practice. But that's my secret sauce, is my ability to connect and relate to somebody so that they feel comfortable enough with me that they open up and share their secrets. And his
Mhm.
secrets were the things he wasn't sharing with other salespeople. They weren't connecting and relating to him.
As I hear that story, which is fabulous, I think about how some sales training and even leadership training might say, find something to connect with someone about, but it's often scripted and doesn't feel or sound natural. And that's true of a lot of scripts, actually,
Sure.
they're taught in sales. What to you are the main distinctions between following some kind of script where, oh, I need to find something personal to connect with versus coming at it from a natural way, the way that you did with this person?
You know, it requires practice. Now, here's where probably people are going to poke holes at me, but that's okay. Is I'm not a big fan of scripts. Never have been. For me, I disconnected to scripts a long time ago. It's not that I didn't like them. I had a hard time. I think this is where the block was. I had a hard time memorizing scripts.
Ew.
I mean, literally, this came back to where I really started to see this come to play is when I was in junior college. And one of the electives I had to take was like a theater class, but it really wasn't theater. It's just you're sitting in a room, you got to memorize things, sit in a chair, and then just re-deliver it. I had a hardest time trying to remember line by line what to say. And it put a block in my head that carried to sales. And then when I was a young person in sales, I had a hard time memorizing scripts here. read this, read that. I had a hard because I had the mental block from junior college until somebody said, internalize it, make it your own. Lights went off.
Yeah.
Internalize it, make it your own so you can deliver it in a way that you feel comfortable delivering it, as long as you get the message across. And I think, so often today, and I'm going to speak for everyone in sales, is and again, this is with all due respect to leaders and managers, however you all identify to the title, is when we ask salespeople in our company to memorize scripts, I think we do a disservice as opposed to getting the foundation of the script and encouraging them to bring it out in their own authentic voice in a way that can connect to somebody without losing the meaning behind the message.
Hmm. No, I think you're absolutely right. And when we think about leaders drawing out, trying to draw out the best of their people, recognizing everyone is different and allowing for those differences in the way they might implement a
Mm-hmm.
specific procedure. There again, that parallel in a sales situation versus a leader influencing others and not demanding or expecting them to do it their way or a specific way if they're given more freedom to explore what feels right to them.
What's interesting about this, and I saw this play out. I saw this play out in the small company that I had. Is we had 10 salespeople on our team, but yet the leaders in my company, and I had a really dysfunctional role. I was a leader, but I was also an individual contributor. So I took a back seat to some of the coaching and training because that's just the role I played. But what I saw was they were trying to coach and train salespeople the exact same way, as opposed to saying, you know what, these are 10 individual people in our company that are going to learn things at different rates, that are going to internalize things completely different, that we can't turn these people into robots. They're humans. And they all bring their personalities and their quirks and their mannerisms to the forefront. We've got to acknowledge this. So, what we need to ensure our people to do is they just understand the foundation of all of this and then work with them through intentionality and practice to then go, okay, now are you internalizing it? Great. Now, how can you implement this out into the field in front of somebody? And that requires practice, something I think sorely lacking.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And listening to what you just said made me think about the whole idea of a person discovering their own why. It seems to me that a way of connecting from leader to whether it's a sales team or other type of team, helping to pull out of others their own why so that you can better align what it is you need them to do and connect it to what's important to them.
100%. And this is why I'm excited about the trust formula, because we can apply the trust formula in how leaders work with people, which is their people. The trust formula applies to how salespeople work with their clients. The trust formula also works on an individual basis and how you work with your friends, how you interact with your friends. So to play on what you just said is I want leaders just to think through this for just a moment. If you applied the four facets of the trust formula, this is how I believe you can pull more out of your people. It's building that authentic relationship. And this is my challenge. It's what do you really know about your people? What do you know that's driving them personally, that's driving them professionally? Where do they see themselves 6 months, a year from now in your company? What are their visions and their aspirations forward thinking? This is what I challenge leaders to do. That's what's about building authentic relationships. But the meaningful value part of this plays out in what you just said. The meaningful value is bringing some business substance and some value to your people by understanding what are their goals and initiatives, what are their outcomes, what would they like to achieve here at this company. And then the third part of this is the inspirational experience, which is how you show up. What are you as a leader doing to inspire your people to become even better? And then the last part of this is disciplined habits. And that's when you as a leader show up for your people. How disciplined are you with this? How consistent are you with it? But if you can take and break down all four facets of the trust formula as a leader, this is how you can drive better outcomes for your people. And I know that's what your people want.
Well, indeed. And the whole thing of inspirational experience, I would love for you to share some examples from your own experiences working with leaders, working with sales teams. How do how can an individual create an inspirational experience for another person? What's involved in that?
Oh, wow. It's all in how they show up. Now, I'm going to play a spin on this, but it's a little leadership spin. But I do know this, and when I was coming up with the inspirational experience, I was thinking about the leaders that I look up to. And the leaders I look up to do two things better than anyone else. They inspire and they influence. They inspire and influence to see in people, help them become better. And in doing so, they in turn become better. So when I start thinking about the leaders who inspire me, I think of the four people that I look up to the most. And these are authors, but I look up to Craig Rochelle. I look up to Erwin McManus. I look up to Mark Batterson. And I look up to, and the names slip in my mind. I will get to it. I promise, Meredith, I will get to it. But the reason why is these people inspire me and they influence me. And they've created experiences for me through how I watch them on podcasts, how I watch them on YouTube, the books that I read that they've published. And it's all the experiences I have that go around in my head in reading their books or listening to their message. The reason why I bring this up is we can bring this to our people. We can inspire and influence them in how we show up. And there's something to be said about inspiration. It's hard to have, and this plays out when I was building out inspirational experiences. If I just left this as experiences, people can go negative or positive. But when I say think of all the inspirational experiences you've had as an individual, it's hard to go negative.
Well, yeah, the word inspire
The
is
word inspires us, right? So then
Mhm.
as a leader, think of all the leaders you look up to and why you look up to them. I bet you it's because they've inspired you and they've influenced you in some form or fashion to help you become better. And this is why I believe as a leader, if there's one that's the fun part of this, that's the multiplier like none other, it's inspirational experiences. And I want us to think as a leader, how am I showing up for my people? How am I inspiring my people? How am I influencing my people to see and achieve things they don't believe they can do on their own? How am I interacting with them? Am I listening to them? Am I valuing them? Am I seeing them? Am I hearing them? In fact, you and Dennis write about it in your book. You write about just about the same thing. That's why we're so aligned with our messaging.
Yeah. Yeah, this it I love that particular piece, and I do see it as a multiplier. I love that you have it as a multiplier because when we think about the people who have challenged us to grow, to see ourselves better, bigger
Mhm.
than how we've currently seen ourselves, it is inspiring, and um, it draws us forward to become who we really are capable of being. Because I think all of us can fall into having a small view of ourselves, especially in an area like sales where you get no, where you don't get the sale many times and you still have to inspire yourself. And if you've had someone who has been inspirational for you, then I think it becomes easier to do it for yourself
Yeah.
when those situations arise.
Yeah. This isn't, This is the first thing that comes to mind, Meredith. This isn't inspirational woo woo.
No,
This is inspirational experience. This is inspirational with intentionality, where you're bringing some meat and some substance behind it. It's not just, you've heard me say the pixie sticks and rose petals before. It's not that type of inspiration. You can
no,
find that anywhere. This is inspiration because you're passionate about something. You have a sense of purpose about something. You want to create a better world for somebody and you truly have their best interests at heart. People sense this. And that's why I believe inspirational experiences and then how consistently you deliver this as a leader to your people matter. You
mhm,
can't deliver an inspirational experience inconsistently because people won't pay attention to you. It's
right.
like the dopamine rush.
Yeah. Well, and your credibility is at risk. If you're
Yeah,
sporadic,
100%.
and occasional, it's like, well, who is this person really? Is this just
Yeah,
them, putting this on today because they read about it or something? As opposed to, you're using the word how you show up. It's a to me, it's a place of where are you coming from?
yep,
In terms of who are you choosing to be? Are you someone who is acknowledging others? And you've used that word practice multiple times, Larry, and I'm so glad you have, because that's what all of this is. It's a practice of looking for the positive, looking for the good in others. And I'm so aligned with you on this whole thing. It has nothing to do with being soft or woo woo. This is about human nature and
yeah,
what we as humans require to thrive.
yeah,
And so, if we're in an environment where the person who is the leader for us is always looking for genuine things
yep,
to acknowledge, not superficial, but they're seeing things in us that we may overlook or take for granted, or as you said, things that are secret sauce that come so easily for us.
yeah.
We figure everybody can do that, but in fact, they can't. And so if someone else notices, points it out, and helps us deepen our belief in ourselves about that, the payoff is huge.
Yeah, I so agree. I remember this was early on in when I was a sales manager aspiring to be a leader inside my company. I went to like a 3-day workshop. And this gentleman who was putting it on, who's now well into his senior twilight years, he has this chair moments all the time. He would stand up on a chair and he'd mess up his hair and then he'd pull a comb out and he'd comb his hair because we all knew that was the moment he was going to say something really profound. True story, Meredith. And
Believe
so,
you.
and so this is what came out of his mouth. He says, "You as managers who are aspiring to be leaders, it's your opportunity to lead with an iron fist, but deliver with a velvet glove." And that stuck in my head. And I still use it to this day. I still use it to this day as a leader. And this is where having healthy, assertive conversations matters. You got to bring that iron fist. It's not pounding it on the ground, but it's the tough stuff that people avoid. It's the things that need to be said that sometimes go unsaid or they get brushed under the table. You got to bring the iron fist to the forefront, but you got to deliver the message with a velvet glove in order to connect with that person. So that person goes, I get it. But if you just deliver a message with an iron fist and that's it, well, we all know what's going to happen. But it's deliver it with an iron fist or iron fist, deliver it with a velvet glove.
Mhm.
It just stuck in my head. And this is like decades
Yeah.
ago.
Well, it's so true because that ability to tell the truth from a place of caring about the person. And so this is where the whole theme of your book, trust,
Yep.
comes in.
Yep.
Because if you've created that trust with the person, then they are not questioning your motive when you are needing to have a difficult conversation because they trust that you are coming from a place of their best
Yep.
interest. And I think that's such a key in our own personal growth as leaders is recognizing when we need to be right, when
Yeah.
our that need to be right, the need to show somebody else they're wrong and point out things, how that gets in the way of our effectiveness But when we're coming from a place of genuinely caring about this other person's well-being and knowing what they're capable of and challenging them about that, they can hear us. And I think
Yep.
that's the key to getting different results.
Absolutely. And what you just said just lends credence to why I believe that people skills and relationship building skills just don't get spoken about enough. Is if you want to build trust, if you want to build credibility, it's about developing people skills and relationship building skills. But all too often we play the assumption game. We assume, right? We assume they already know how to build relationships. Well, heck, you're humans. You already understand something about people. Well, people are messy. Relationships are messy. And we just don't do enough. And I see this across the sectors that I work in is we're not doing enough as leaders, not only to work on our people skills and our relationship building skills, but we're not helping our people nurture and grow their people skills and their relationship building skills. If we did both of those in parallel, this directly applies to how you grow revenue and how you grow profit. It has a direct correlation. I can't scientifically prove it. I can just see it from the companies I work with.
Well, and this is one reason I loved your chapter when you were talking about the successful traits of salespeople, because again, I thought this is so true of leaders: curiosity, kindness, and feedback.
Yeah.
I just was cheering, going, yes, 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 because we think of kindness as being soft, when in fact, if we are operating from a place of being kind to others, we are never going to be sarcastic or
No.
say something at the expense of their self-esteem or respect. It's they're just incompatible if we are coming from a place of being kind. But let's talk about curiosity for a minute, because I just loved your focus on that. And it's what you were just saying made me think about that, because when we operate from assumptions, we tend to drop our curiosity because we think we already know.
Yep.
Whereas a place of curiosity, you're wanting to learn more. How does that come into play for both leadership and sales?
Yeah, it plays out in a couple different fashions, but this is where when I found out my why operating system, I'm going to answer it by telling just a quick story.
Sure.
Is I was always asking questions. I was always asking questions. I was always asking questions until I found out that the how part of my operating system is I'm a high clarify guy. That's when the light bulb went off. Is the reason why I'm so curious and the reason why I ask so many questions is I just want clarification. And I think there's a kind of a silver lining in all of this that I want us to really think through as a leader is if you brought curiosity is not a bad thing as a leader, and curiosity is not a bad thing as a salesperson. In fact, I've been around salespeople that go, I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions. Don't be sorry. You're there. You're asking questions because you're curious and you want to know. And if you don't, you can never get any clarity on things. So think about how leaders are working with their people. If they're not bringing curiosity and clarity to the forefront, they're leaving a bunch of stuff undone. If salespeople inside your company aren't bringing curiosity and clarification to the forefront, deals are stalling because they don't have a clear vision into what these people really want to achieve. I was always inquisitive as a youth. And so I started asking all these questions. But now, once I know that part of my why operating system is clarify, if things are not crystal clear, I put the brakes on, I tap the brakes. And when I work with my clients in the very beginning, the same thing is before we advance this any farther, are we all clear? Can we all get consensus on what needs to happen in order for you to achieve these things? And I just think curiosity, we talk about it, but we just don't coach and nurture our people enough on it's okay to be curious. This is why it goes back to our youth. I believe it goes back to our youth when we would ask so many questions and then someone would ask, why are you asking so many questions? Right? It's enough, Johnny. Stop asking all the questions. Y'all know where I'm going with this. I know if you're a parent, y'all know where I'm going with this. So that we embed that in the back of our mind so that we don't, as adults, we don't ask enough questions because at our youth, we're saying, stop asking so many questions. So you ask one or two questions and you stop. And that's where curiosity stops.
Well, such an important point. There's so much that we do that we bring from our childhood or
Yep.
early years of things we've said. And so taking that time to really analyze, is this really true?
Yeah.
Does this really apply? And to me, a beautiful place for a leader to start practicing curiosity is when somebody expresses an opinion. Sometimes we take it at face value. But if we pause and say, gosh, I'd love to know, how did you come up with that
Yeah.
position or that idea? So it doesn't feel like it's threatening, but you genuinely want to know, because there are so many times that I have done this, and I'm sure others have too, where we hear somebody say something and we assume we know where it's coming from, what they meant by it, and then we respond, and it wasn't what they were referring to at all, instead of asking more questions to get what you just said. I love your word clarity. I think that is a huge takeaway from this conversation is, what do I need to learn to get greater clarity about this person, about this situation, about whatever it might be, in order to take the next appropriate step? I just think that is a really powerful insight. And there's so many that have come from our conversation. And is there anything, as we're wrapping up, I know there were more questions I wanted to cover, but in the interest of time, I want to just give you the opportunity. Is there anything else that's come to your mind as we've had this conversation that you'd like to share?
No, no, and I'm glad, Meredith, that we're kind of wrapping up our time together on clarity. Because when things are not clear, it's like with trust. When there's low levels of trust, things come to a screeching halt. When there's high levels of trust, things move really fast. When things are not clear, things are skittish, things are all over the place. Things get left undone. When there's high clarity, things happen pretty fast. It really does. It's clarity and trust. Or if we can bring out our trust in our team, and if we have crystal clear lens, do exactly what needs to be done, watch how fast you move the needle.
Great. I love that you brought those two together. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, Larry, how can people get copies of your books, The Selling in a Post Trust World and Selling from the Heart?
Real simple. You can go. Thank you for asking. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for entrusting me with your audience. I really appreciate it, Meredith.
Has been great.
Yeah. Now, people can go to sellingfromtheheart.net
Mhm.
/book if you want to find out about the books. If you want to find out about my latest book, you can just go to sellinginapostrustworld.com.
Great. Well, those are easy to remember, and we will have those on your show notes page. And for people that want to connect with you, learn more about the work that you're doing, how do you suggest they connect with you?
Two places. Again, they can go back to sellingfromtheheart.net. They can find out anything that we're up to. I'm really active on LinkedIn. I make a deep, deep, deep commitment to give back to the sales world that was so good to me. So I'm on LinkedIn every day. You can find me on LinkedIn at Larry Levine 1992.
Great. Thank you so much. Larry, I want to acknowledge you for the work you've done on yourself,
Thank you.
the work you're doing in the world, that you took time to learn about your own why and the way that you are living it every day. And I can just feel your genuineness, your caring about helping to make the world a better place. And I want to thank you so
Mm,
much for your commitment and dedication to doing that. It's been such a pleasure having you with me today, and you've delivered so much value for my listeners. Thank you.
thank you. This means a lot. Thank you, Meredith.
Thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out the powerful tools we've created to help leaders strengthen their character and communication skills. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.